The night air in Las Cruces, New Mexico was thick with the scent of dust, and the cold wind cut through the mountains, bringing with it a sense of isolation. This town, nestled in the arid desert, was infamous for the strange disappearances that seemed to plague it over the years, whispers of shadowy figures and unsolved mysteries passing from one generation to the next. But tonight, within the sterile walls of the FBI's local office, something more than just a local legend was unfolding. Special Agent Catherine Blake, recently returned from an operation that had kept her away for weeks, sat in her office catching up on paperwork. As she sifted through the endless reports, a single notification flashed on her phone, drawing her attention. It was a text, brief and chilling, with no signature, only the words, "I know what you did." Catherine felt a cold shiver run down her spine. This wasn't just a threat. It was a direct warning, one that suggested her covert operation, involving a classified agent and a clandestine group, had somehow been uncovered. Someone knew the truth, and it was a truth Catherine had gone to great lengths to keep buried. The message wasn't random. It was personal. She hadn't anticipated this moment, the one where the past she'd carefully hidden might come crashing back into her life. Fear gripped her, but it wasn't the kind that paralyzed. It was the kind that sparked action. Catherine had no intention of running from this. She would face whoever sent the message and find out just how much they knew, and how far they were willing to go to expose it. Catherine Blake sat at her desk in the local FBI office in Las Cruces, New Mexico. The low hum of fluorescent lights and the quiet shuffle of papers around her provided the usual office ambiance. On the surface, Catherine appeared composed, a picture of professionalism. Her posture perfect, her movements precise, every action calculated. But if one looked closely, they would notice the subtle tension in her eyes, the tightness in her jaw, the way her fingers tapped restlessly on the edge of the desk. Beneath the calm exterior, her mind raced, constantly circling back to the message she had received just hours earlier. Her career had not been an easy one. Every step she had taken in the FBI had been marked by hard work, sacrifices, and a relentless drive to prove herself in a world where women like her were often overlooked. Catherine had earned her position through sheer grit, never relying on favors or shortcuts. Her latest operation, though a success, had come at a personal cost. While her colleagues had celebrated their victories with the usual fanfare, handshakes, congratulations, and speeches, Catherine had opted to retreat into solitude, avoiding the limelight. She had never been one to revel in public recognition. Her previous mission had been difficult, filled with moral gray areas and moments when she had questioned the orders given to her. Yet, the details of that mission were kept from her superiors, hidden behind layers of official reports and sanitized summaries. It was a part of her work she had buried deep, convincing herself that the cost had been worth the outcome. But now, as she sat in her office, the weight of those buried secrets seemed to press on her chest. The message had stirred something in her, something she thought was long forgotten. The truth, it seemed, had a way of finding its way to the surface, no matter how deeply it was concealed. Catherine's thoughts swirled, but she knew one thing for certain. She couldn't ignore this. Catherine decided not to share the strange message with her colleagues. She couldn't afford to draw attention to it, not yet. Instead, she resolved to investigate the matter alone. The quiet solitude of her office was the perfect place to begin. She meticulously went through the files from her last operation, the one that had been her most complicated and high-risk mission to date. As she sifted through the endless paperwork, she began to notice subtle discrepancies in the reports. The mission, officially deemed a success, didn't quite add up. Several key details were missing. Critical information had been erased. Entire sections of reports had been altered. Catherine's brow furrowed as she dug deeper. It wasn't just the missing details that bothered her. There were also agents from her team who weren't even mentioned in the official records. It was as if they had never existed. She ran her fingers over the papers, the reality of the situation slowly dawning on her. Someone had tampered with the files, intentionally hiding the truth. Her pulse quickened as she felt a growing sense of unease. The secrets she thought were buried were starting to resurface, and she had no idea who was behind it. The phone rang, breaking her concentration. It was John Hoffman, her former partner. She listened intently as he spoke, his voice laced with urgency. His informant, the one they had been relying on for crucial intel, had gone missing under suspicious circumstances. The same sense of danger she felt now was clearly in the air. Catherine agreed to meet him at a small cafe, hoping to gather any information he had. When she arrived, the familiar warmth of the cafe did little to calm her nerves. The moment she stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanned the room. But her heart sank when she saw the lifeless body of John slumped over the table. His face was pale, his eyes vacant. A piece of paper lay beside him, a chilling message written on it. "You're next." The room seemed to close in around her as she realized the gravity of the situation. Her investigation had just taken a deadly turn. Catherine knew her life was in danger. The weight of the situation was pressing down on her as she tried to make sense of the chaos. The loss of John, her former partner, was a brutal wake-up call. He had been a trusted ally, and now he was dead, leaving her with more questions than answers. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she made her way to the local sheriff's office, hoping for support. But when she laid out the details of her investigation, the sheriff hesitated, his face clouded with reluctance. He made it clear that her case had spiraled far beyond the scope of what local law enforcement could handle. He warned her that this wasn't something they could control, that there were forces at play much bigger than she realized. Catherine's frustration bubbled up, but she understood. The sheriff wasn't refusing to help. He was acknowledging the dangerous game she had stumbled into. With that door closed, Catherine knew she had to take matters into her own hands. She returned to the files, digging deeper into the information that John had left behind. What she uncovered was disturbing. Hidden within layers of classified documents, she found references to a secret operation conducted in Las Cruces, a mission that involved a group of individuals who had disappeared under mysterious circumstances. As Catherine pieced together the fragments of the operation, it became clear that these people had been part of an illegal experiment, something that straddled the line between government-sanctioned operations and outright criminal activity. With each new discovery, the web of lies surrounding the operation grew more intricate, and the truth became harder to grasp. Catherine had always prided herself on her ability to control a situation, to maintain clarity in the chaos. But now she found herself sinking deeper into a world of manipulation and deception, where every answer led to more questions. Her investigation was no longer just about solving a case, it was about survival. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized that her life was just one small part of a far larger, far more dangerous plan. Catherine's investigation took a darker turn when she stumbled upon a horrifying revelation. The people who had disappeared were not random victims. They had been deliberately chosen, selected for experiments that involved the integration of cutting-edge technology into intelligence operations. These experiments were shrouded in secrecy, conducted under deep cover, with the results hidden from public knowledge and buried within the highest levels of government. As Catherine pieced together the scattered fragments of evidence, the scope of the operation became clear. What had initially seemed like a series of unrelated disappearances was in fact part of a larger, more sinister agenda. The victims were not just pawns in a game. They were part of a covert experiment designed to push the boundaries of technology and warfare, all in the name of national security. The more Catherine uncovered, the more she realized that she had been unknowingly entangled in this web. Her own role in the operation had been far from what she had believed. At the start, Catherine had thought she was working on a routine mission, one that served the greater good. But now, as the truth began to emerge, she saw how deeply she had been manipulated. To get answers, she reached out to an old colleague, someone she had trusted in the past but had since left the FBI to work in private intelligence. The meeting was tense, but it was the conversation Catherine needed. Her former colleague confirmed her worst fear. Her own superior, the man who had guided her throughout her career, was deeply involved in these covert operations. He had been one of the masterminds behind the experiments, using Catherine and others like her as pawns in a much larger game. The realization struck her hard. All along, she had been a part of something much bigger and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Her desire for truth had led her here, but it also revealed the painful reality that she had been used and manipulated by those she trusted most. The game she had unwittingly played had deeper stakes than she could have fathomed. Catherine's realization that she held not only her own fate in her hands, but the lives of countless others pushed her into action. The truth had unraveled before her eyes, revealing a web of corruption, manipulation, and destruction that reached far beyond what she had ever anticipated. She knew that if she did nothing, the lives of those who had already suffered would continue to be trampled by the very system she had once trusted. With no time to waste, Catherine gathered everything she had uncovered: documents, recordings, photographs, evidence that painted a picture of illegal experiments and covert operations carried out under the guise of national security. She made her way to the headquarters where her superior, along with several high-ranking officials, were holding a closed-door meeting. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for. Catherine entered the room, calm but determined, and presented her findings. The documents and evidence she laid before them were undeniable. For a moment, the room fell silent, each person processing the magnitude of what had been revealed. But what happened next was not what Catherine had expected. Her superior, the man she had trusted most, leaned forward, his face a mask of cold calculation. Instead of acknowledging the truth, he attempted to downplay the situation, urging Catherine to stay silent, to cover up the truth for the sake of maintaining the system. The weight of his words hung in the air, a heavy reminder of the powerful forces that controlled the narrative. Catherine stood at a crossroads. She was faced with a moral dilemma: walk away, leave the system intact, and protect herself and her career, or stand her ground, expose the corruption, and risk everything. The room around her seemed to close in, the decision pressing down on her chest. She knew that whatever choice she made would change the course of her life, and the lives of those who had been caught in the system's web. As she stood there, the echoes of her past choices reverberated in her mind, and the weight of the truth forced her hand. Catherine knew she couldn't walk away. She had come this far, and she would fight for the truth no matter the cost. Catherine knew there was no turning back. The decision had been made. She had gathered her courage and exposed the truth to the public, sending the evidence to the media. The moment the story broke, it caused a stir, sparking a wave of controversy. Investigations were launched, and soon, her former colleagues found themselves at the heart of a scandal that threatened to unravel everything they had worked for. The truth was out, and it was more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. However, the victory came at a cost. Catherine had become a target. She was now an enemy of the very system she had once sworn to protect. The authorities moved quickly to silence her, and soon she was forced to disappear. Catherine, now a fugitive, took to the shadows, leaving behind the life she had known. She relocated to a place where no one knew her name, where she could blend into the crowd and evade the relentless pursuit of those who wanted her gone. But despite the isolation, she felt a sense of peace. In her heart, she knew she had made the right choice. The weight of the decision still lingered, but it was overshadowed by the knowledge that her actions had forced people to confront the darker truths hidden behind the veil of authority. She had made others question the system, and that, to her, was worth the cost. As days passed, Catherine understood that she had become something more than just a whistleblower. She had become a symbol of change, a figure that represented resistance against the corruption she had uncovered. While the world continued to move on, her actions had left a lasting impact, one that would inspire others to stand up and fight for what was right. Even though she now lived in the shadows, Catherine felt a quiet satisfaction. She had taken a stand when it mattered most, and in doing so, she had forced the world to reckon with its own darkness.